All right, so thesis statements and the argumentative paper. So this presentation will go over the details of your research paper that's due at the end of this course. You'll notice in the syllabus that it's broken up into several smaller assignments so that you can get back into the habit of drafting, organizing, and research. So how to start your paper. You'll be using the text to determine a suitable subject matter for your paper. I want you to use the text, but apply it to something that you would like to know more about. Perhaps in your current job, you would like to change the reward system, or you have a group dynamic issue. Research the problem you wish to fix. In future classes, the scope may be broader, so in this class, we kind of want to focus that out. So how to find a good topic. Start with the text, but then expand further. Check out what the library has, as well as reputable online sources. Use that research. Determine the question that you want answered, and the answer to that question will be your thesis statement. So what is a thesis statement? You may remember from your writing classes in your undergraduate program or even in the middle school and high school, but everyone needs a reminder. Your thesis statement will tell the reader exactly what your paper will be about. It is focused, specific, and in this case, arguable. More on that later. In this paper, your thesis should be one concise sentence, but later in your grad program, you may need to expand a bit as your papers get longer and longer. So the purpose of this thesis statement is to let the reader know what your paper will be about, but it also anchors your paper. Every claim you make will somehow support your thesis, so it ties everything together. So the challenges when developing a thesis. There are a few. Oftentimes students start with a thesis that's too broad or vague. This paper is not a long paper, so you want to make sure it's very concise. Otherwise, you'll have a paper with too many claims and not enough analysis. You may also have a thesis that's too narrow in focus. If you're having trouble finding research to support the thesis, you may have a thesis that's too narrow and you have to expand a bit. The biggest issue that I see that students make is that the thesis isn't arguable. Because this paper is an argumentative paper, you need to take a stance. So here are two examples of thesis statements. One, pollution is bad for the environment. Why is this non-debatable? Well, because nobody can really argue that pollution is a good thing, or it would be very extremely difficult to support. If you look at the second sentence, you could argue how much the government should spend on limiting pollution. So just by tweaking a few things allows you to make it arguable, make it debatable, and then focus on one part of a larger subject, which we come down to narrowing your scope. So here are a few other examples of thesis statements. So in the first example, drug use is detrimental to society. Well, you'll find that this is a very, very broad subject. One, what kind of drug use? Is it illegal drug use? Is it just any drug use, over-the-counter drug use? And how does it affect society? The other two focus on specifics of illegal drug use and also the specifics of pollution. So when we go back to the drug use one, we can say illegal drug use is detrimental to society because it encourages gang violence. So that's a little bit more specific. You're talking about illegal drugs and you're talking about the one piece that makes it detrimental to society, and that's gang violence. The other example really narrows that one down about federal spending in pollution. So it even makes it more easy to understand what the paper is going to be about. All right, so brainstorming. So how are you going to get to this thesis and topic and develop your paper? So brainstorming can help you with several steps of your paper. You can brainstorm to get started on the topic, and then brainstorm some more once you narrow that down. Use brainstorming to come up with supporting claims once you've thought of your thesis. Once you have a working thesis and 3 to 5 supporting claims, you can then work on the structure and outline. So I've mentioned arguable papers a couple of times. There are several types of papers: expository, descriptive, narrative, and argumentative. So this paper is going to focus on the argumentative, investigate a topic, collect, generate, and evaluate evidence. Evidence is the research that's out there, and establish a position on the topic in a concise manner. We're not just going to be talking about different leadership styles. You're going to specifically say, this is the leadership style that's best for this particular organization or this particular type of project. You're going to be very specific. So it's not going to be something that's just going to say, these are the types of leaderships. All right. So the structure of the argumentative paper. You're going to have a clear, concise, and defined thesis statement that occurs in the intro, and then you're going to have a logical transition between the introduction paragraph to the body. The body paragraphs will include evidential support. They'll include your main claims that support your thesis, and then the conclusion will wrap up all of your supporting claims, restate your thesis, and then end your paper. It does not introduce any new information. Okay, so outlines. You want to start with an outline so that your paper makes sense. Papers that don't start out with outlines are usually rambling and incoherent. An outline makes you focus on the structure so your readers isn't lost halfway through the paper. So it aids in the process of your writing, helps you organize your ideas, and presents your material in a logical form. All right. So the introduction paragraph, it answers these three questions. What is this? Why am I reading it? And what do you want me to do with this information? So you're going to set the context, state why the main idea is important, and why the reader should care. Be compelling. You may want to start with an attention getter, such as an anecdote, rhetorical question, quote, alarming fact, anything of that nature. So the body paragraphs, these are where you're going to have your supporting claims that tie everything back to your thesis. So here you'll see an outline that you can use for each paragraph. You'll need to make sure that you have your claim, research, and then don't forget to tie it back to your thesis. That's the warrant. Including a well thought out warrant or bridge is essential to writing a good argumentative essay or paper. If you present data to your audience without explaining how it supports your thesis, readers may not connect between the two, or they may draw different conclusions. Don't avoid the opposing side of an argument. Instead, include the opposing side as a counterclaim. Find out what the other side is saying and respond to it within your own argument. This is important so the audience isn't swayed by weak, unrefuted arguments. Including counterclaims allows you to find common ground with more of your readers. It also makes you look more credible because you appear to be knowledgeable about the entirety of the debate rather than just being biased and uninformed. You may want to include several counterclaims to show that you have a thorough research. So here's an example of a paragraph broken down into each section. I won't go over it in its entirety, but please take a look at this as an example. So then finally, you're going to have your conclusion. Again, you're going to restate your topic and why it's important, restate your thesis, address any opposing viewpoints, and explain why readers should align with your position. You'll have a call for action or overview of future possibilities. The biggest pet peeve I have is when students bring in a new idea into the conclusion. Don't do that. Summarize the main claims, address any counter arguments, and then tie it all up.